Alright, so this is the material I just picked up, the 6061. Like I talked about, it's a little bit harder than the 5052 or 5152, whatever it is. I keep forgetting. This is the stuff that doesn't like to bend, but it is obviously quite a bit stronger. It's more rigid than the other stuff, and the thickness is close to what we have on the pan. So we've got the pan put together. This is where the pickup tube goes. We have our piece here to step it down that way. This is the exact same position. We didn't have to adjust that tab, so this is exactly where it used to be. Now the dipstick comes in here. That might change a little bit. We're going to find out. We might have to space the dipstick out based on the amount we removed. But we have the windage tray here. We need to do a quick test fit on the motor. We're going to put the windage tray in. See, we clearance that for our tube. That's how much we brought it up. We're just going to make sure that doesn't interfere with the crank. It shouldn't do, but we don't know how close this is. So fingers crossed we didn't just create a different problem. Yeah, we'll just shave down the crank wherever it sticks out the most. Yeah. Shave it. So that's about a lowest point right here. We have, this is close to where the pickup is, and we have this, the rod's at the bottom where it sticks out the most with this corner here. So what we're going to do is put it on there and get a feel for it, tighten it up a little bit, rotate the crank, double check it. Then what we might have to do is put a little bit of clearance clay here and then rotate and see what kind of room we have. Just make sure we're not going to interfere. So the oil pan is back on. We checked it, double checked it. We have clearance and we have a ton more room. You can see where we used to be right here. I think we have about 1.5 inches right there, but that's as max clearance as we can get. We're right at 2 inches on this pan right here, which I think that's what the Holly pan was. I think it was about 1 inch and 7/8.
Just under 2, yeah.
So that's like the diameter of that tube. We couldn't really go any less than that, because then we're getting into the crank and then would be in the way. So we should have room. We'll go ahead, drop it in. The truck is unlocked, so we're going to bring the truck down, put the motor in, and hopefully, let's just do one of these. Ready? So we have way more room. The motor is actually leaning quite a bit forward from where we need it, and we have clearance. We have tons of clearance. In fact, this part of the pan is needing to be closer down here. Let me see if I can pull it. Yeah, it needs to go about there. And we have room on this pan. We have room on the drain. And look at that. Let me give you an idea. I can put my hand. But it's nice to have more clearance than less. That way it's got room around everything. So we can snug those bolts up. I think the next thing would be is to put the transmission on this and see if it works on this cross member. It should do, and the mounts are lined up with the pins. We have to tighten these bolts. It's just kind of in there loose, and we can adjust it back and forth on these mounts here. You see it can slide. We deliberately left those loose so it can move to line up the trends. So the mount over here, the cross member, which is right here, that can go back in place, and we're thinking if the transmission fits back on there on the mount, we are gold. And the transmission is in. I would have shown you as putting it in there, but it was a little bit of a pain because it weighs a ton. We had to use a cherry picker to put it on top of the trans jack. But this is the mount from the Silverado, and the height wise fits, the cross member fits. The drill holes are off the base of the mounting points. It's not that far off. This is where the hole is, and this is the hole in the mount, and the rubber is here. So I think we're just going to re-drill that. That's not that big of a deal. Rather than trying to find a mount and order a mount and wait for it to come and then they forget to send it. This is the shift selector bracket off the Silverado. This is the one off the Colorado. This might bolt back into position. It's close here, so that might require some dimpling there, but not a big deal. This bracket is touching there, but that just holds a wiring harness. that is in. I mean, it's got room all the way around it. That's some good news. We need it after last 2 days, right? We needed a little bit of...
The engine was in the hole yesterday at this time, and now it's back in again at this time.
Same time, but now there's a transmission on it, and it's not rubbing.
You can put your hand under the oil pan.
That's where you're going to put your sandwich. That's it. We're going to coin the phrase fitting sandwiches in places. Radio has talked about putting Twinkies in and cookies and all kinds of stuff. We're going to measure everything in sandwiches.
Oh, we put a cheese sandwich in there and let it run for a little while.
Yeah.
Nice and toasty.
Yeah. So the shift selector fits. The holes are perfectly lined up. The lever here is off the Colorado because it attaches to this with a pin. The other one has some kind of little bolt going through there. So that lever fits back on the transmission. The shape is the same. It lines back up. Obviously, I can't move the shift selector without putting a key in. But that part fits. That's definitely another thing that's just an easy thing, but it's often overlooked. Cable fits. It's got room, see? That mount has to be drilled. We're going to look at the drive shaft. The drive shaft is opposite to this, where we have a male spline on here. Our Colorado trans has a female spline, so obviously the drive shaft, which is over here, that is the transmission side. So we're going to put this up and see how far off it is, and we're wondering if this can just be changed to the opposite, whatever that is. It's like the female spline, so it slides in the transmission. But that way we can use this drive shaft because it's obviously a new drive shaft. It's an aluminum drive shaft. It'll probably hold all the power that we ever need, and the other end is designed to fit the diff. So we're going to line this up and just see how close it is, and talk to our drive shaft guy, see if he can change that end. Is about level with this surface right here. So if they change this piece, I think the drive shaft's still going to be too long. I'm going to call a couple of drive shaft guys tomorrow just so we can kind of get this in the works. But I think we're going to have to take so much out of this and basically put this back on here, weld it on, because the female piece, I'm thinking it has to be, you know, about this long, and it needs room for it to slide on there. As the suspension goes up, it needs to go in. So I think this is going to be too long. But what we can do is contact the drive shaft guy, give them dimensions that we have, give them the diff to the surface of this part on the transmission. They should know the dimensions. There's kind of obviously a rule of thumb what has to be taken out, how long it should be. So we'll let you know on that, but that's going to start tomorrow. So the manifold is really close from this angle. Looks like, I don't know if you can see that, it's about 1/8 of an inch between the manifold and the steering column. We're going to basically turn it. It's only in that one spot because they're going on an angle. We're going to go down, rotate that, turn the wheels basically, and see if there's anything in contact and mark that area, and see if it is it's kind of through there. There's a bolt through there, I think. We're going to see if that bolt is going to get in the way of the manifold. You see that bolt right there? As it spins around, we don't know if it's going to hit the cast manifold. So this is from above right here, and that bolt is in a spot that it clears. I mean, it's very close. Keep going, turn it all the way to the right. See, it just fits. I mean, it just fits. So I'm thinking right in that area, this manifold is probably pretty thick. I want to mark it, do a little bit of clearance on there, and see if we can get the heat shield. We tore that boot there when we put the mount in. Look at that, we've got a tear on that thing. The mount hit that when it was half in and half out. Keep turning it. Keep going.
Oh, we're doing the V6.
Right there, stop.
Yeah.
So let's mark that manifold. I mean, all the times we've had the motor in and out, I mean, if all we've done is split one boot.
Like I said, that probably happened when we took the V6 out, because it grabbed on that when we were pulling it out.
Yeah. There it is. Modified PCM. So this is the Silverado ECU that we sent to HP tuners. Now they actually turned this thing around pretty quick. It's been everybody else has held us up a little bit. These guys were on it. They got it in and out quick. So that's some super nice packing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Nice. We have instructions. Does that ECU look same dimensions to ours? It should sit in the same
it looks like
housing. You have the Colorado one?
It's a little bit bigger.
Okay. Plug spacing is the same. We're just going to see if it fits in our little bracket,
Plug's actually different.
which is here. Now this is the transmission control unit from the Colorado that controls the 8-speed. That is not going to be used, so maybe the ECU being slightly bigger will just take over that space because we're not going to need it. So we'll go ahead and read through this and find out what we need to do. We have to do a little bit of configuring, but this is what we're going to do, is run this just like a Silverado. No plans of changing anything. Everything's going to be in place. Cats are going to be running, all the emission controls. We're going to hook it up just like it was in the Silverado. So that's the plan. We're just going to see if that will fit in.
We may have to, we're going to take this box out.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
And that one there, if we cut the ends of the box, it'll probably snap into there if we just cut the side off there and let it hang over.
No snaps are almost in the same place.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, yeah, that's good. As long as we can get to our water lines, which we shouldn't be in the way of that.
No, it'll be bottomed out in there.
Yeah, that's awesome that the snaps work in the right same spot. Good stuff. So that's easy modification. Manifold, we're going to pull out and do a little bit of tweaking. Then we'll start hooking up wires and find out where wires go. Fuel lines, transmission lines, oil cooler lines, and air conditioning lines. Air conditioning is going to be a little bit more challenging because the air compressor is on this side, but there is a ton of room around it for the lines to come out, which is a good thing. We were concerned that was going to be one of our points of contact. So it's another day. I am now going through kind of like the checklist. What do I need to do today? First thing I need to do is go in the store and ship the orders. We've got a few orders in, and there is another guy that wins something. So we're not doing like an official raffle or anything like that. We're not putting rules and terms and any of that. I don't want to get into that kind of stuff. I don't want to do giveaways. I don't want to make you buy something you don't want to win something you want. And it's probably lucrative in many aspects. Everybody's doing it, but I don't want to do that. So every 25 orders, we'll just give something away. And we might not be able to put that officially in rules, because then people might say we're using it to sell items. So this will be the last time I talk about it. Somebody said that we might be kind of on, you know, kind of on that raffle kind of rule. I'm not going to do it. So this last video, I'm going to mention it. Just every 25 orders, we're going to give you something. We're not even going to show you what it is. We're just going to give you something, right? So this was such a relief yesterday. This is day 4, but it's like episode 3. When you're working on something, and I've done this a couple of times, real quick, one of the most stressful cars I ever did was the first Insight. We called it a K-Sight. We put a K-Series motor in an Insight. I bought that car when the prices were high, because it was right in 2007 when the whole gas was expensive, so the hybrids went up in value. And I had bought a perfectly good car with the intent to take it apart and change the engine. And I didn't have a whole lot of resources at the time. I had enough money to buy the car, but I didn't have a lot of money in the bank, so you could build it 100% right, even though that's the way I do it. But to take that car apart, take the engine out, chop up the engine bay, put an engine in, and then hope that it goes the right way. And then next time I did it was the CRZ. I bought the CRZ. My son was literally a month old. He was just born. I bought a brand new car on a credit card, maxed out everything I could to buy this car. Day 1, chopped it up, put a K-Series motor in it. Of course, it worked out. I have a lot of drive and a lot of, I'm not going to lose on this one. I'm going to keep working hard. If I have to work 7 days a week, I make things happen. If you followed LHT for any kind of time frame, hopefully you get that from my character. I don't give up. So this is the same way, but fingers crossed. It's still nerve-wracking. I gotta tell you, I much prefer working on an S2000 or something that we are cut and dry, meaning comes in, has a list of stuff, we do the stuff, put it together, car goes out. We know ahead of time everything's gonna work. This kind of not knowing and checking this and checking that is great if I had a larger facility and we could build S2000s or whatever over here, and then build weird stuff over there that doesn't have a time frame, doesn't have to be done. Does that make sense? So I kind of like this stuff once in a while, but it's kind of nerve-wracking, especially when real quick, you need a four-door vehicle to pick your kids up at school, and the only thing you own is a Corvette and an S2000, and your four-door car is in pieces on the lift. So I had to borrow George's car and pick up my kids yesterday. Long story, a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes, but it's all good. We're making it happen. Here's our list right here. This is pretty cool. LHT Colorado V8. That actually might be a good shirt. That was George's doing. That might end up being a shirt, George. That's awesome. This is kind of like our checklist, things that we have to look at and go over. Make sure we kind of go, well, we've got to address this, got to address that. Of course, keep on trucking. So it's happening. Let me go process the orders in the store, and then George should be here momentarily. Okay, it's not what you think. Esther does our sandwiches right here, and often when crumbs come out of here, we get those microscopic ants, the ones that you can't even see, and sometimes they bite, sometimes they don't, I don't know, but that is ant repellent. So hopefully that works. We'll put a little bit down here. So this is the angle of the steering rod that comes through here, and again, it's not touching, but it is close. So I want to add a little bit of room and clearance right here. So what I'm going to do is, I've already cut this section out, as you see. I give myself a little bit of clearance. So what I want to do is cut some tube and have just a little bit of a shape in there, and then kind of blend it. Well, manifolds, I used to be so afraid of hurting the flow and playing with it. It seems over the years, testing it and watching videos and seeing other people, they really don't care that much. You see the guys that take headers and kind of smash in the tube to get clearance, and it really doesn't seem to hurt them. So we're only going to drop it. As you see, this is part of the casting right here. I'm only going to drop it to about that point there, and it's a little thicker on this side, but these manifolds are actually pretty nice. So I don't think I'm going to hurt the flow, but I'm going to get some tube, lay it in there, cut it to fit, shape it, and use some NI99, George?
Yep.
Rod, which is good for a cast and stainless. We've used that in the past. We've welded to cast turbo manifolds and cast turbo housings, but we'll get some room here. So we got the lines sitting here from the Silverado. This is the ones that bolt to the engine, and basically where it goes into a flex up at this end here. As you see, we just cut it on the soft line. So what we're going to do, rather than trying to crimp these because they are slightly different size, this is the oil cooler on the Colorado, this is the oil cooler on the Silverado, and looking at the sizes, if I was to put it into AN size, this is closer to a 10 and this is closer to an 8, which I don't know why they would have a bigger cooler on a Colorado, but oil cooler, as long as it has a sufficient flow, as long as we don't go smaller than what the engine is moving, I think we'll be fine stepping up to this for this short piece. So to make this a cleaner, easier install, so we don't have to crimp and take across town and crimp back, and if you get crimps off, you know what that's like, they won't fit. If this degree is off a hair, it won't line up perfect in the seal. So we're going to basically put AN ends on here, and that way we can make our own lines, same as the trans side, which is the trans is almost the same size, but they're steel on the Colorado, aluminum on the Silverado, which is bizarre. I don't know why they use two different materials on two different trucks from the same company. So this is the manifold. We have taken that section out like I talked about. This is a long process to weld this back in, so we've done it little by little, but we have gained a decent amount of clearance in there for that steering shaft. We're dropped down, we had about 1/8 of an inch. This is dropped down 3/16 of an inch, and this was the closest point here where that bolt was at. Also, the heat shield I cut in half and basically put a standoff here and a standoff here, so that these will go back. I'll put these on real quick, show you what they look like. But this is almost right here is one of the rubber boots on the steering shaft. So that bolts in right here. You can kind of see what I got going on right here. We needed these additional standoffs because this cutting in half, we've lost some of the structure. Same as on this one, I added that there for the standoff. So the GM bolts go back right here, And again, it might not be important until it's long term, and then it might, you know, bake the rubber. We don't want that. We don't want to cook that rubber. And then I got a 6mm Honda bolt that's just the right length. Goes in right here. So as you see, this is the steering shaft. Was kept plenty of room here. I'll show you in a minute. There is a rubber, there's a bend here in the steering shaft somewhere around here, and then here where that rubber gator part is, which will get cooked from the manifold. So this should keep that heat in. And if we was to make a big shift, steering shaft, our steering shaft is about there. So we should have a decent amount of room, and you're not going to see it. I know it looks a little goofy. It's going to look like this. You're not going to see it. So we should be good. And again, it's only making 385 horsepower from the factory, I think it is. So this ain't gonna hurt it. We'll see how it goes. Might possibly dyno the truck just so we can get an idea. It's gonna lose some power through the bigger wheels and tires, but it should be close to what a Silverado would make. And we keep our factory flanges here. Our cats go right back on there. I'm not sure yet. The factory Y pipe might go on. Now I know this is done, I can put this on the motor and tighten it up. See if the Y pipe fits, which that would save us a ton of work as well. So this one here is the Silverado, and these are the factory flanges, the factory cats, the factory O2s, and this is the Colorado. As you see, it's not that far off. If this fits the motor and it clears our cross member, this might go on. What we can do is cut it there, and then somewhere over here, that connects to our factory exhaust right here. So somewhere over here, that's the second cat on the Colorado. There's only 3 cats on the Colorado, there's 4 on the Silverado, so we need those cats. We're going to put it back just the way it came. We want to keep it clean and happy and emissions friendly, and as OEM as possible. We want to basically build this truck the way GM would have built it if they would have put a V8 in there. So having the factory flange and factory parts is just nice, and it will obviously make our job easier. We can cut it somewhere over here in this Y. It's a pretty nice Y section. Almost looks the same as the Colorado. Sizes is almost the same, if not identical. So we can cut just past here somewhere, keep the factory flex, and Bob's your uncle. Alright, so manifold's in, and we have a good 3/8 of an inch. Actually indents, it's kind of hard to see on this light. We'll see it better when it goes up top, but it shapes to that steering shaft. So we've got actually a decent amount of room now. The transmission mount, that's the difference right there. You can see the bolt hole. That's how far it is off. But we've still got plenty of room on the mount. We're clear of that rubber. Again, I don't know why they change things like they do. That mount would work on both vehicles, but there's obviously a different part number. Transmission wire is in there. We talked about that the other day. We flipped that bracket around, it holds that, and it's got room. We've got room over this side. So this doesn't work. I guess it would have been too easy, but this is the distance between the 2 flanges right here. That fits obviously the motor, but this section here between this outside of the cat doesn't fit between the frame rails of the truck. This one will not, so what I'll do is I'll try fit this one first. This is a solid mount and it has the copper O-ring, so we'll go from there. Do one at a time. We'll cut this one, put it on, cut this one, put it on, then fabricate that bit. But sometimes it's not that easy, but you never know. Sometimes it is. So cut the Y pipe right here. So I left part of it in. Guess what? It fits. So it's got clearance everywhere. All the bolts are in. This side might be different. We're gonna have to jog away because it's pointing right at the frame rail. We're gonna have to build like an S shape and bring it in, but my measurements were off. Look at that. That's where the crossover pipe would be. Let's cut that rough. I think what we'll do is we'll cut it past the weld there so we can slide into it, kind of like the way they did it. But that was just a quick cut. Kind of see where we're at. But maybe we'll get the other piece. Let's cut a little bit bigger section out of it. We'll cut it kind of like there and see if that goes in, because there is a bit of a jog in this and it will rotate. So possibly, because this will slip, it has an S shape here. We might be able to cut it on here and rotate that and slide this back on, but that's impressive. So we have tons of room around that steering shaft. Actually more room than I was expecting. See it from that angle right there. We've got a good 1/2 inch everywhere. Next thing we have done right here, we have the oil cooler lines hooked up. We have AN fittings welded on both ends, and then the AN soft lines with the 90s between it. So that worked out exactly how we proposed it would. Now next thing we're gonna have to do is the same, basically on the trans cooler lines. Right now we are working on the crossover tube. It didn't fit obviously, so it's getting modified. George is now working on the trans lines. So the wiring is plugged in. So far we have to modify that we talked about. Not a big deal. We're kind of doing the tricky stuff and then working over to the less tricky stuff. AC lines I think would be the most tricky. Water heater lines need to be done, radiator lines. Again, it's quite a bit different to the Colorado. I'm trying to look at the hose where we would put it. It's kind of frustrating because this is kind of where the intake would go. They're almost in the same place. So this, we might have to come up with this or down with this, maybe drop it and put the hose over it. It's kind of a goofy configuration. I don't know what we're going to do there yet, but lower hose is where is the lower hose on the radiator? Can't see it. I'd have thought it'd been right at the bottom. Oh, we'll find it. It must have had it. Water comes in and goes out. So don't know what we're going to do here yet. We're kind of doing this as we go. So I just ordered hoses from GM. Of course, the problem working with a new truck is when you call your local parts store and you say, I want something for a 2020, it's not listed. They don't have it. They don't have access to it. So rather than building custom hoses and trying to use straights and T's and things like that, I ordered them from the Silverado, thinking the Silverado outlet must be over here, and obviously the Silverado ports for the engine are here. So we're going to see how close that is. Hopefully it's pretty close. One goes right to the engine, one splits off and T's to the overflow bottle. So again, that might be close to use the hoses, just tweak them. I also ordered a mass airflow sensor for the Silverado, which should be fitting this harness right here. Intake, I'm guessing we're going to build it. We're going to try and use the Colorado airbox. And again, this is first round is to make it work as OE as possible. I'm not saying down the road we might build an intake for it and headers and exhaust and tune it and do a cam. I don't know. We're doing it in stages, baby steps. This is kind of something new to us. We're doing it little by little, and I really need the truck back, so I can't drag this out. This isn't one of those builds that's going to go on for months. This has to happen, get it done, get it back driving. Once we have the mass air done, I think we're going to go high on the intake, drop down on the radiator, and shoot the hose this way. We'll configure that in hoses. We'll go to the parts store and try and find hoses that are close, and then if we have to splice them, we will. Trans is pretty much figured out. The lines just need to be put on. AC fuel lines are not too bad. We're going to do the same kind of thing with the fuel lines. One side is the pressure to the motor, and again, pressure, it's only about 45 psi. The direct injected engine, obviously the high pressure side of the engine pump is in the engine, so all you're doing is feeding it with about 45 to 50 psi, and the engine has the high pressure pump. And then obviously we'll tee them back into the factory Colorado fuel lines down there, purge lines, this kind of stuff. This is low pressure, but it is emissions lines and vacuum lines. This is for the booster. There is a pump that attaches here from the Colorado. It used to sit on the motor right here. What that does is applies vacuum when the motor goes into a 4-cylinder mode or a 6-cylinder mode. As the vacuum drops, so that you don't feel like you've lost brakes, it will actually fire up and provide pressure on that booster so the brakes feel consistent all the time. That pump is no big deal. Jared actually put a plug for it over here. So you saw that, George wrote that part of our list, our little checklist, and I saw that and went, you know what? We've talked about making a theme t-shirt. I think that looks like a good logo to me. So quickly, I just put that together. I'm gonna call our good friend Brian from Monaco Auto Design that's done a lot of our Photoshop stuff for our vehicles and blown the pictures up and done all that good stuff. This guy's super creative. He also designed our silhouette t-shirt for us. I'm gonna send that to him, that isn't a dude in the back. It's going to be the light bar, kind of like what I have on the truck. But this, we're going to make a number of these t-shirts. If you want to support the build, support the channel, keep an eye out for those. If you're a truck fan, an LHT fan, a Colorado fan, a V8 fan, a t-shirt fan, let us know. Check out the store, support the channel, buy one of these shirts. But we're going to keep cranking on here. It's Saturday. I'm doing a little bit behind the scenes and trying to get some stuff happening. But thanks for watching. Hit the subscribe, hit the like. We'll see you in the next video. Don't forget, enjoy your trucks.